Hello and welcome to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Rachael is a speaker, inspirational author, and an overcomer. As Rachael is walking through her own journey of grief, she's challenging others to persevere and overcome their own circumstances. Find out more at rachaelflick.com. Here now is your host, Rachael Flick.
Hi friends, welcome back to this week's episode of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Today I'm bringing you an interview with Laura Acuna. She is a speaker, author, Bible teacher, and coach. She served as a women's ministry leader for over 22 years. A graduate of Liberty University, she earned a degree in Christian counseling and a minor in biblical studies. She's the co-founder of Sisters in Faith Ministry, a nonprofit ministry to women in the Damascus, Maryland area. Married to Pat, the two are the parents of 3 sons and 1 daughter-in-law. They became first-time grandparents in July of 2021. Laura challenges others to grow up to become spiritually and emotionally mature. Her new book, Still Becoming: Hope, Help, and Healing for the Diet-Weary Soul, will be published in December 2022. In her free time, you can find her shopping at Vintage Barnes or out for coffee with a friend. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you for having me, Rachael.
It is such a pleasure. I'm excited to hear about your story and what God is doing through you.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be on the Hopecast today.
So it sounds like you're passionate about healthy eating and how it relates to our relationship with God. Tell me why this is a passion for you.
Well, I'm passionate about women becoming healthy and whole emotionally and spiritually, and part of that is how we treat our bodies, how we view our bodies. And my own story, just briefly, when I was 11 years old, I was 5 feet tall, 100 pounds. And by the time I was about 12 and a half or 13, I weighed well over 200 pounds. I gained over 100 pounds in the span of about a year and a half, and out of the blue sky. And so that's, wow is right.
Yeah, that's, I'm just imagining going through junior high and being in that season of transition and trying to find your identity and having that experience on top of it. That sounds really overwhelming.
It changed everything. It completely changed everything. I often describe it as a bomb going off in my life, and everything changed. I had been an excellent student, had a great experience in elementary school. Teachers told my parents I could do anything I wanted because I was bright and motivated, and soon I began failing and struggled all the way through junior high and high school. I made it out of high school barely because of now what I know to be depression and anxiety and probably some good old ADD that went undiagnosed for so long. It was a rough road, and it set me on a trajectory that led me to writing this book eventually, and wanting to help other women avoid some of the things that I suffered through.
So when you look back on that time, can you see what the triggers were? What happened in your body? Was it metabolic, or was it diet based? Was it a comfort mechanism? Like, what was going on with you in that time?
Well, it took a long time to get underneath my why. I really never fully understood why. And when you don't understand, then you blame yourself. So it's too late to know if something metabolically was going on in my body. I wish so much that had happened for me back when I was 11. But back then, when a little girl gains 100 pounds so quickly, it's a motivation issue, it's a laziness issue, and she needs to stop eating, and you take her to the local weight loss program. So that's what happened to me. But as I've gone through healing over the past few years, which is how this book was birthed. It's really everything I've learned through about 7 or 8 years of therapy for trauma and disordered eating. And that was when I started unlocking my why. And so as best I can tell you, I grew up in a family that had very high expectations. They're very well-meaning, loving parents who are with the Lord now, and I miss them dearly. But there were high expectations. And sometimes when those expectations can't be met, or you feel like you can't, you start blaming yourself. And so that was the beginning. Let me read to you from day 3 of my book, Still Becoming, because it encapsulates my experience as an 11-year-old growing up in my family at that particular time. And remember, it was a long time ago. It was a different generation, different kinds of parenting, different philosophies. It was 1970, and that's a long time ago. So let me read this. This is a paraphrase from Dr. Anita Johnston, who is a world-renowned expert on women with disordered eating. So here we go. The typical woman who suffers from disordered eating picked up early in life that her emotions needed to be tamped down, hidden away, and silenced. She often felt she was too much and not enough all at the same time. Many report they had a pervasive sense of not fitting in, of not seeing things the way others did, and of being a misfit. As she is naturally intuitive and sensitive, this posed a problem for her. Her family, for one reason or another, did not appreciate her sensitivity, perspective, and honesty. She often received the message, sometimes non-verbally, that her outspoken, questioning behavior was not acceptable. Keeping the peace was the priority. There was to be no rocking the family boat. So she did what anyone with limited choices would do. She complied, silenced herself, denied her intuition, and voluntarily dimmed her light. And she did it by turning to food for comfort and dieting for some measure of control. And this adolescent experience described by Dr. Johnston is part of my long and winding story. And it is a typical girl with disordered eating. It's not every girl. You know, those of us who suffer from this have black and white thinking. But this certainly was my story. And when I read this years ago, it was very emotional for me because I thought I wasn't typical anything. I thought I was the only one.
That's good. I really connected when you said feeling like too much and not enough at the same time, and using food as a mechanism to stuff feelings instead of emoting, grieving, sharing, to bring comfort from dopamine, right, through those comfort foods. And I have a history of anorexia and bulimia and disordered eating, and so I can definitely connect with that description of how you felt when you were 11.
Exactly. It's so typical, isn't it? I mean, I've connected now through the book with so many women like yourself, and it's amazing to me how we all felt like we were the only one. And yet there is a common thread among many of us. And some of this has been described to me as I've gone through treatment for this as little t trauma. And that was eye-opening for me, that little t trauma is just this pervasive sense of not getting your needs met during a long period of your development. And it can have the same impact on you psychologically and even in your body as a major trauma. And typically, a person coming into therapy for the first time with little t trauma will say to the therapist, and I said this exact thing, I don't know what's wrong with me because nothing bad ever happened to me. And that's a red flag. And they're like, really? And the therapist actually said to me, no trauma? And I said, no. My parents loved each other. They were wonderful. My grandparents loved each other. They all loved us. And then she said, you don't think gaining 100 pounds when you're 11 was not traumatic? And I said, oh. She said, you just described it as a bomb going off and everything changed. So that was a big leap forward on the healing path for me, just to become aware that through, again, well-meaning parents, that my personality, for whatever it is, caused me to feel that I wasn't fully understood, I wasn't fully heard, and that I had to silence myself, tone it down, dial it back in order to fit in.
That's good. That's good. I think, you're talking about generational cultural issues. I think that we had a form of vast emotional anorexia in that time and in parenting. And I know that I didn't have any language for emotions. I saw expressions of anger and sadness, but there was no context. There was no processing. It was not encouraged at all. It was actually discouraged, right? Like contain and, look like you have it all together. It's really important for other people to think that we have it all together, that we don't have any problems. And I've had to work really hard as an adult to get emotional language, to recognize that food or any addiction is meeting legitimate needs with an illegitimate way.
That's a great way to say it. That's a great way to say it.
And so, as children, what do we have access to? Food, right? That's our first access point of comfort. And I felt so much shame for struggling with food until someone said that to me. And it's like, well, how else would you have coped with the strain that you were feeling but couldn't put into words, except what you had immediate access to? And it really normalized it for me. And it sounds like that's something you're passionate about too, is helping other women experience the freedom and to be able to recognize that it's not our personal deficit expressing itself through food.
Exactly. And actually early on in my treatment, the therapist would say to me, can you agree that what you did was reasonable as a child? And I would say, no, I can't. I just couldn't agree with it. I've been doing this for 5 decades. That's hard. When you've been doing something like that for so long, it's hard anyway. But later, after I finished with my therapist, after we were done together, she said, when you walked in my door, I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be a challenge. But I did everything that she told me to do because I was all in. I was so ready to be free. And one of the things that she did right from the beginning was to try to nudge me gently, ever so grace-filled and gently, to agreeing that it was reasonable that I did what I did when I was 11. Exactly how you worded it, even better than I am, but that there was limited availability to any, what else could we do? We were helpless. And once I accepted that, and it took a while, things started ramping up and speeding up in my healing. There are certain moments where that kind of awareness pushes you forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Lord, his first step in intervening in our stories is to make us aware of our need, because we don't care about things that we're not aware of, and he can't deal with things that we're not aware of, and we're not going to resource ourselves for things we're not aware of. But that is really painful and sometimes scary. I was talking to a friend about emotional awareness and vocabulary, and we listed a bunch of different emotions, and she said, well, wow, I must be really messed up. And I said, no, friend. I was like, to begin to list these things that you felt in a certain circumstance is part of the healing process. And we all have this. We all have these experiences and reactions for different reasons, and you're just part of the human experience, and this is Jesus coming to you. Like, this is a good thing, even though it's really scary to say, I don't have it all together, I'm not in control, and shame really won't get me out of any sort of bondage that I'm in.
No. And all of this is to rid us of shame. It doesn't come from him. I believed that shaming voice in my head was him. I believed that for, again, decades, until I began to line up my thinking with the truth from God's word and accepting the sweet voice of Jesus over the voice of the shamer. And what an amazing difference. Shame does not belong in the life of a Christian. But it's such an effective tool the enemy uses.
It keeps us silent. Laura, what do you think were some of the precipitating factors that made you willing to get help and do what it took to be free from this?
Well, when I was in my late 40s, I'm 64 right now.
Okay.
When I was in my late 40s, I went back to school. I had an epic failure, which was the snowball that started rolling when I was 11, almost failing high school, and went to community college. Epic failure there, and quit in total shame and disgust with myself. And it was always a thing. And so as I started growing in my faith as a young mother and going to women's Bible studies and taking it seriously, I've always been a believer, but this was when I started really applying God's word to my life and things started changing. I eventually got up the courage to go back to school. And so I went back to Liberty University when I was 50, started with English 101, and took the whole course load all the way until I graduated when I was 55. And I graduated summa cum laude, straight A's. That is God. That is the redeeming grace of God. That meant so much to me. But when I graduated, I had been seeing a therapist at that time, kind of a generic talk therapy kind of situation. And that really helped me go back to school, to get the courage to go back and face the awful transcript from before and do all that. But this very well-meaning, again, therapist said to me, well, now that you've had this huge victory in this area of your life, the weight is just going to come off. And I knew.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes. I already knew that wasn't true. I'd lived with fantasy thinking about that for a really long time. So I knew that wasn't true. But I kind of put it on the back burner and didn't really deal with it. Just kept dieting and trying and losing and trying and gaining and all. And then just a year later, my mother died suddenly. She had a sudden illness. It lasted a week, and then she was gone.
Wow.
And so that was really hard. I'm her only daughter and the only child here. And then 3 months later, my dearest, oldest, best friend, who had stayed close to me like a sister since we were 6 months old, also died suddenly out of the blue sky.
Sorry.
Thank you. It was so hard. That was 7 years ago. That was the tipping point. That was the tipping point. I could not stuff that grief. I couldn't do it. I tried every which way. I was taking care of my father. That was very hard. And I felt alone, even though everybody was helping me and supporting me. It was a rough, rough time. And so about 2 months after Mary Lou, my best friend, died, I was looking up therapists for disordered eating for the first time in my life. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we worked on grief. And we worked on grief the whole first year. Really, probably the first 2 years, because it was so difficult. And then while I was in therapy, my father died as well. So it was a long road of dealing with things that didn't seem to have anything to do with my issues with food, but had everything to do with my issues with food.
Well, it's, our addictions are just a cover. They're just a dissociation point, right?
Right.
They are the most obvious thing. They front the issues, and they're usually what people are aware of in our life, but they're not the point, right? Just like, when you fight in your marriage about, somebody coming home late and not calling, it's not because they came home late, right? It's the feeling of being unimportant to them to receive a call to let you know they're going to be late for dinner, right? And food and any kind of addiction is the same way. It's not about the addiction. It's about what the addiction protects you from.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
So tell me about your book. Why did you choose the title Still Becoming?
Well, I chose the title Still Becoming because that's the Christian journey. We are still becoming. I would have thought as a young girl that at 64, I would have been all done. No, no. We'll be growing and maturing and becoming more and more like Christ as the years go on, and it won't end until he takes us home. And so that's the Christian life. I'm still becoming. And I believe that's a very grace-filled mindset, that we are not hard on ourselves. We give ourselves plenty of space to learn and grow. It's 3 steps forward and 2 back most of the time. And that's okay, because while we're on this healing journey, we learn so much about ourselves, all that self-awareness and what our strengths are and how resilient we are. It's beautiful. But we mostly learn about how awesome God is. So it's an important journey to stay on. We don't get to check out at a certain age or anything or give up. We get to keep going with God. And he's so encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah, I sometimes feel frustration in my story where I'm like, are we really circling back around to this issue again?
Right.
Are you sure there has to be another layer? Do we?
Yes.
And yet, it's the Lord's kindness for us that he wants to release us, from more of the things that hinder us and our ability to receive love. I think that that's a huge part of pain, is it blocks us from experiencing God and his reality. And he wants to remove those barriers for us so we can feel his presence. And so I love that. And I love hearing you talk about your journey and just being a beautiful model of growing closer to Jesus. I think that, we can become more stiff-necked. When I read Bible stories and, you see that people were living, 1,000 years, and he's like, I'm not dealing with you for this long, and I'm taking you down to 120, and about, 6 generations later is like, down. And,
Right.
And I think, I always wondered about that. But when you look, you see people either getting softer and more tender as they age, or they get harder and more bitter. And to deal with us as humans as we get more rigid in our thought processes, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that either if I was in God's position. But you are such a beautiful picture of what it looks like to continue to become softer and more beautiful in the face of God as you age. And I really love having models like you in my life of like, that's how I want to do it. That's what I want this to look like.
And I've had models in front of me that I have kept my eyes on. There's women to this day that are in their 80s and they're still chasing hard after God. They're still doing the thing. I'm so inspired by that, because it can be scary when you start getting older. You start thinking, is anyone going to want to listen to me anymore? Am I going to become irrelevant? Am I still going to be creative? And God is just so, so, so good. He will have us leave everything we've got on the field before he takes us home.
That's awesome. I love that analogy. So who do you hope is touched by your book and the content that you created?
The woman that I picture reading this book is a woman who has suffered with negative body image and an unhealthy relationship with food for a long time. And it's just that secular thing that goes over and over and over, lose and gain, lose and gain. The mindset of the diet works, but I don't. There's something wrong with me. That whole thing, all of that toxic thinking, that is the woman that I picture reading the book, because quite honestly, that was me. And I want her to know that she can be free of this before she ever even loses a pound. You don't have to wait until you hit a certain number in order to be free. But we think that.
That's good.
We think that.
We worship the number.
Oh, we do. I went to a conference that First Place for Health puts on called Restore Me. And it's for women who suffer with such things. And I went as a participant right after these deaths happened in my life. And I walked in the room, and there was a woman there who had quite a bit of weight to lose. And by the world standard, she would have been more than morbidly obese. And I looked at her and I thought, oh, that poor thing. She has so far to go. Look at her. Oh my gosh. I wanted to cry. But I was judging her by what she looked like. And as soon as I got to know her, I realized that she was free and I was not. She'd been on the healing path for a long time already. She wasn't using food anymore for comfort, but it was taking a while for her body to heal, because there are no quick fixes here. So I thought, my gosh, it blew my mind and completely changed my thinking. I mean, God dealt with me within just a few minutes of landing on that retreat. I mean, I walked into the room where the retreat was being held, and I met this lady right away. And instantly, he was like, you're not going to think like this anymore. You are not going to think like this anymore. She's free. You're not. And I wanted to be like her. I wanted to be like her.
So what are some of the keys to transitioning your thinking into a place of freedom?
Well, the first thing is to get rid of the shame. I don't see how anyone can become free if we're still entertaining the shamer. And so, again, all of this takes practice. I'm not saying God couldn't instantly heal us from the shame. He absolutely could. But I believe that he puts us through a process, again, so that we get to know him more, and so that our trust muscle is strengthened, because we need it
trust muscle.
To carry
That's
us.
Good.
Yeah, right in our core. That's what holds us upright and keeps us going, because life is hard. You know this. You know this personally, Rachel. So we have to have our trust muscle strengthened so that we can do the work and keep going. So the first thing is to get rid of the shame. And the way we get rid of the shame is to replace the lies with truth. We have to be in our Bibles. We have to be reading the Word of God for ourselves and applying that truth to our lives for growth and change. So that's the first thing. So the second thing is listening to your hunger and fullness cues and reconnecting with your body, listening to what it's telling you, because it will tell you what you need to know. But for those of us who have disordered eating or eating disorders, we disconnect from our body. I felt like I was a head walking around without my body for 50 years. So I had to learn again to tune back in and to respect what it was saying to me and then give it what it needs. So, for instance, with dieting, a lot of times I went to bed starving. If I was out of my points for the day or my calories for the day or my exchanges, you name whatever it is, I'm out of them now. My body is screaming at me to eat something. I interpret that feeling as good. That's a good feeling. And I go to bed hungry. And of course, the next day's a disaster because now I'm really hungry. And it's harder and harder to control myself and my food intake. But the second thing was to learn to tune back into my body. And it changed everything.
Yeah, it's interesting how we learn in childhood to disconnect from our body, our intuition, our emotions, right? And so it's a learned process to disconnect. And then it's another learned process to reintegrate. And it's pretty painful. The first part in childhood is innate and you almost don't know that it's happening. But then when you are intentionally plugging back into, I wish that I remembered the Japanese word, but it made me laugh so much for this meme that I saw that it's like the definition of which is when you're not hungry, but your mouth is lonely. I was like,
I know the feeling.
This is too connected, right?
That's
and so
good.
It's like, well, am I hungry or is my mouth lonely? You know,
That's a great question. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
But yeah, to really retune in and say, because sometimes it becomes so innate, this pattern, this relationship with food, that you don't even know right away. You're like, well, am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I emotional? Am I seeking to disconnect? Am I stressed and I would like to feel better? And those are things that take a period of time to really reattune to what are the cues, what do they feel like, and what should I actually be doing instead of just, putting food in my lonely mouth.
Exactly. I love that. And also to give yourself grace if you are hungry. Sometimes you'll eat breakfast, you'll have a nice nutritious breakfast, and then you'll be hungry an hour later. And my old dialogue was, what's wrong with you? You had enough to eat. Why are you hungry again? Now I say to myself, with curiosity instead of shame, I'm hungry again. What could I eat now that would tide me over to lunch without it being a problem for me? So then I'll go eat a piece of fruit or a banana or whatever. Sometimes I won't. But I have so much freedom. This is a free country. I don't have to follow all those food rules anymore.
Yeah. You mentioned disordered eating and eating disorders. Could you define the difference between those for us?
I'm not sure there's a huge difference. I think it's how it manifests itself, the problem with food. And then some are more severe because they really can be life-threatening, such as anorexia and bulimia too. But to me, disordered eating is just an all-encompassing term that means we have an unhealthy relationship with food. It's not in order. It's not the way it's supposed to be. We're using it for reasons it wasn't intended for, perhaps. I think of women I know that really aren't even by the culture standards overweight, but still have all these rules and regulations about when they'll eat, how they'll eat. They'll eat in a little dish with a little tiny spoon, whatever. And that is still disordered eating. It has nothing to do with what you weigh. And then I guess eating disorders would be things that you would need medical attention for, where you would, I guess it's a ramped up version of disordered eating. But I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know that.
So maybe severity. Would it be fair to say like eating disorder is something that's not healthy or in bounds, and then an eating disorder, did I say that right? Mm-hmm. Disordered eating would be, something is not right, or it's consuming you, or your thought process around it is really compulsive. And then eating disorder is a severe medical condition that kind of takes that across the spectrum to, like you said, needing medical help.
But I'd say the root of it is the same. I was in a small group not long ago with women who suffered from disordered eating, but there were women who were bulimic there, and there were women who were anorexic, and they were my age. And it was not a Christian group. It was a community group. But I felt like I was in a Bible study because we all were like kindred sisters together. And even though it manifested itself differently in each one of us, the root of it was the same. We all got each other. So there is a root that's very similar, for sure.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And that there's like you said, we feel like we're the only ones. We feel lonely, but really there's so much in common that we can come around one another in that space. Tell us a little bit more about your book and the format that you created it in. What can people expect each day as they go to the book?
Okay, so it's a 31-day devotional journal. Each day describes a topic, a theme of what we suffer with as women who have disordered eating. For instance, I don't just talk about food and body issues. I talk about finding your voice, being comfortable as your true self. How do we deal with aging? What do we think about beauty, etc.? So it's not just about the nuts and bolts with overcoming an unhealthy relationship with food in your body, but certainly that's all through there. And each day is about a 3 to 4 minute read. There is a soul fitness strengthening your core exercise at the end of each day, which is like a journaling prompt. And then there's a prayer. And that's pretty uniform all the way through the 31 days.
I love that wordplay, strengthening your core. That's so cool to think about building up your soul and your inner person.
Thank you.
I love what you did with
too.
that phrase.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Okay, so your book is coming out, and where will it be available?
It's available now for pre-order everywhere. Okay. Amazon, Books, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. It's available on my website as well.
And what's your website?
My website is laura-acuna.com.
And would you spell Acuna?
Acuna.
Perfect. And is there any social media channels or ways that people can get in touch with you or follow you for more content?
Yeah. First of all, I have a new podcast called Still Becoming. And the first season is the content of the book. I'm covering a lot of the content of the book plus some things that didn't make it into the book. And the next season is going to be other areas in our lives as women where we're still becoming. So the Still Becoming podcast is on all the podcast platforms. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Wonderful. Laura, thank you so much for being here on this week's episode of the Hopecast. Friends, I encourage you to go find and pre-order Laura's book, Still Becoming, and check out that podcast. And that sounds like wonderful content. That would be an ongoing resource. Everyone, if this episode has meant something to you or you know someone that would receive a blessing from it, will you share it with them and help continue to push forward the message of hope and resilience? Everybody, this has been the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.
You've been listening to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. To find out more, go to rachaelflick.com. While you are there, you can book Rachael for your next speaking engagement. Her inspiring message will be sure to engage and touch the heart of your audience at your next conference, church event, or business function. Go to rachaelflick.com to book her today. While you're online, you can discover more information about all of the platforms that this podcast is on. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave us a review. To follow Rachael on social media, simply click on the social media icons at the top of the page and you will be directed to those sites. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.